Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about Moon square Venus in the natal chart. So this aspect shows a difference in our emotional response and our pleasure response or our love nature. So it can be quite difficult to feel certain or confident in ourselves as far as love life goes or as far as self worth goes, because there can be emotional inhibition and emotional complexes within the feminine self. So I believe that, like, men and women, like, we both have masculine and feminine energies within, right? Now, the moon and Venus are the archetypal feminine energies. So, when the two feminine energies are in conflict, it shows that this is a feminine energy blockage. And feminine energy represents softness, it represents like magnetism and attraction to us. Like the feminine attracts, the masculine pursues, right? And on the moon level, the feminine energy represents the emotional body, how we feel emotionally nurtured, how we feel emotionally fulfilled, how we experienced our mother and early childhood, and even past lifetimes as well. And then Venus represents the lover archetype, so how we are in relationships, what turns us on in a pleasurable sense, and not just what sexually turns us on, because that can also be related to Mars, but what like gives us that feeling of pleasure and enjoyment as well. So Venus can show a lot about like our personal pleasures and what we find pleasurable to all the senses, so our sensuality. So when these are in conflict, there can be an excessive physical nature. So there's different manifestations of the square. One of them, or one of the more common manifestations of the square, is like an addictive personality, like addicted to pleasure, right? And actually, you can see this with the soft aspects of Venus to Moon, or even the conjunction also. But with the square, it tends to show up in a more difficult or negative way. The square is going to be the most difficult Moon Venus aspect, okay? So, what that can look like is like an inability to show restraint, because once we start experiencing pleasure, like, and often with Moon Venus, it's going to be through food. So there could be a food addiction, or it could be just through like, overwatching of like TV, or like, overindulgence in basically any aspect. But you could also look to like the Venus sign placement and the moon sign placement. There could be overindulgence in these areas. And another manifestation of it too is overindulgence in relationships. So you're going to see this in all Moon Venus aspects, actually, like the potential for this, the potential for people pleasing and codependency, and, having an emotional need for a harmonious relationship. So in the case of the square, it can be, a need to keep the relationship at all costs, that like we're putting up with behaviors that we aren't truly okay with. So it could be like extreme, like people pleasing, or like codependent behavior. So like being unhappy for a long time in a relationship and still like wanting to keep the peace, or like an inability to like be ourselves if we feel like people aren't going to like it. Now, there can also be an interesting manifestation of the square where that it's almost like the tension causes them to act the opposite at times. So then it's like we can see people with Moon Venus square really like acting in super unpleasing ways. So it's almost like a reaction to that codependent energy, that then now they're like disagreeing with everything you have to say, or they're like being super difficult. And like, so it's almost like they don't know that proper balance of like being themselves with other people in a harmonious way. It either comes out in this super like off-putting way to others, or like it comes off in a way that's like they're not even being themselves at all. They're not even honoring their emotions at all. It's like totally pushed down and stuffed down. So there's an awkwardness in relating to other people because of this, because they just don't really know how to do it successfully. And it's coming from like such a deep place. So it's likely coming from childhood or even deeper, like past lives even. And so what could have been likely in childhood is like the mother, she was either moon or Venus, but she wasn't able to like be both. So like in one case, maybe the mother was like, a socialite, or like she was very focused on like other people and relationships. She was like a relationship addict, and she didn't, because of that reason, have the time to give the emotional nurturing to the child that needed it. And actually, you could see that with the other Moon Venus aspects as well. But in the case of the square, it's going to be that hurt the child the most, those behaviors. Another case, it could be the opposite, that maybe she was like celibate or something, and like she totally repressed everything. Maybe she was a single mom, she didn't date at all, and she was just over smothering to the child, right? So then she was like just the moon aspect. So either way, the person with this square doesn't know what it feels like to have emotional nurturing and pleasure and sensuality like at the same time. They feel like they can have one or the other. So men with the square are going to have the classic conflict, which can lead to having affairs. Not in all cases. I'm not saying automatically everybody with a Moon Venus square is going to have an affair, although it's possible and there is a chance of it. Throw some Uranus in there too, and you're just laughing at it. It could definitely be like there could be some interesting love relationships. But so like the moon in a man's chart, or in a masculine energy person's chart, can represent the wife. It can represent the woman that makes them feel emotionally safe, nurtured, like that companionship, right? And then Venus is the lover, the woman that like sexually turns them on and is like pleasurable and beautiful, like the, archetype that they're attracted to, like in that physical sense. So when these are in conflict, it can lead to like a difficulty in choosing the right woman to commit to, because the woman that they want to emotionally commit to, they're not sexually attracted to. And the woman that they're sexually attracted to, they don't want to emotionally commit to. So this can also lead to men, unfortunately, some men with this square, being a little bit like, what's the words? Like slut shaming women, because they have this inner conflict between, like the woman that they're sexually attracted to and the woman they actually want to commit to. So it's like they want the wife that's like the, purity energy, but that's not the woman that they want to actually be with in a sexual sense. So that could lead to problems. Now, it is likely that throughout the course of a lifetime, and, the square leads to frustration, and the frustration leads to the struggle that leads to the resolution of the square. So it is likely that they will overcome this difficulty, and also it's likely that like they will find a woman who does represent both aspects for them. So they'll have some conjunctions in the synastry to the moon, and hopefully some conjunctions to Venus too. Maybe the woman ends up having like that square in her natal chart, like with some other planets or something, and then like that could lead to the resolution of it through synastry. So like it is likely that this conflict will be resolved, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, and then in women, in feminine energy people, right, with the square, it's more to do with like her emotional state and how she feels attractive as a woman. So there's something about like when because like Venus for a woman is like her allure and attractiveness and how she feels, like her feminine pleasure and sensuality and like attractiveness in her feminine energy. So when she's embodying that Venus or letting herself be in that energy, she feels emotionally like it doesn't connect with that. So that can lead to women acting out like Venus in an overly like too much way, like not that there's ever too much, but like, like it could be like that she's overly sensual and like aggressive about her feminine sensuality in some way, because emotionally she just doesn't feel on the inside like she is enough. So the remedy with this is like recognizing that like what you need for emotional fulfillment and stability and like that feeling of like home that the moon represents is different than your Venus pleasure pursuits, right? And so like finding a way to harmoniously balance the two energies. Also, some inner child work for both, men and women, anybody with a square, you do want to go back to the childhood because there's likely something in there that has caused this, right? And so that's another step to the resolution of this square, is to actually go back to the inner child or go back to the relationship with your mother and see like, okay, so what what has caused this? And then also releasing and removing shame about what you desire is really important, because another thing could be like, what you truly desire and feel pleasure in the Venus sense, maybe that was like frowned upon in your childhood or by your mother or by your family or your lineage. Like you're like having this conflict, right, between what's really pleasurable for you and what makes you feel emotionally safe. So you have to like remove shame. And once you remove the shame about who you are and what you desire, that's going to take a big weight off your shoulders, and that will also take you a step closer to like resolving these energies. So yeah, a big part of it is healing shame. A big part of it is inner child healing. A big part of it is recognizing like your two feminine energies within, and men have feminine energies too. They're in a conflict. And so it's like, how can we create a win-win for both of you, right? And what does that look like? And I don't know what it looks like for you because I'd have to look at your chart and see what the signs are that this square is taking place in. But there is a way to resolve it. And the square is... it's difficult, it's frustrating, it's hard to resolve, but it is possible to resolve. And the only problem about a Moon-Venus square is that out of all the squares, it's a little bit of a lazier square. So you might not be pushed to actually like quit your addiction or do the inner child healing work because you're too busy enjoying the guilty pleasure, that, you should work on healing. Why is it guilty for you to experience pleasure? But yeah, that can be the one downside of this square, is like, I do think it gets resolved like through the difficulty of like having a relationship that is successful. But as far as like inner work and like self work, sometimes we're a little bit more indulgent for that. With this square. Where it can really come out in the best way is artistic and musical ability. That's a really good one for Moon Venus. There's a real knack for all types of art, in the sense of art as beauty and an expression of beauty. And you can actually be really gifted with beauty and like an eye for things, even though one of the lifetime struggles can be healing that feeling of being not beautiful and resolving that. So there's many gifts to this. There actually can end up being a gift with people, because at such an early age, we feel an unease with people. We feel an unease in relating to people, and we either come off wrong or we are off-putting sometimes without realizing it. Or no, we do realize it, actually, that we're off-putting, and then that can create anxiety. But what ends up happening with our squares is like, we can become an expert on relationships and how to make other people feel nurtured and feel not ashamed of who they are, and feel like everything that we didn't feel with a Moon-Venus square, we can then learn to give to others. And that actually does a lot for healing our own conflict when we have this square. Like, if you can give it to someone else, you can give it to yourself. And this square, it is relational. It is very much a social square. One of the ways to resolve it is through our relationships with other people and learning how people work. And that can ease some of the anxiety and frustration too, like studying relationship dynamics or studying like codependency and how to like heal that, or studying like inner child, or, you know, studying everything to do with love and sex and romance. Like this, because it's been an area of difficulty, and there is, you know, you could say there's a sort of karma in dealing with women or dealing with the opposite sex. So, I mean, for women, it's not so much in the relationships with men, it's the relationship to their own femininity, which will cause issues in their relationship with men. So it is relational with men or women. It is a relationship karmic aspect. So ultimately, it will be healed through learning about relationships and how to successfully relate to other people, with like, without being overgiving, without being like codependent, or without repressing who we really are and one side of us, right? So, yeah, it's a really interesting aspect. And people with Moon Venus aspects, even the square, especially the square, actually, are very attractive to the opposite sex. They exude warmth, even the square, especially the square, because sometimes the square, they're going to do it in a way that's a little bit too much warmth, right? They're too giving, too beautiful or sexual for their own good with the square. So it actually can end up being a gift too, because you will attract people to you. It's just like once you get them relating with you, then you feel awkward and weird, and that's when the problems happen. So that's what your work is. The work of a square is like to deal with this frustration and karma and anxiety, and like it's one of your life's challenges, but then it becomes one of your life's gifts, because squares are like the karma that you're here to clear. And this square is all about feminine energy healing. So, you know, anything to work on healing your feminine energy as well is going to help you with this square. So yeah, I'd love to know your experience of this one. If you have it in your natal chart, or you know someone, or you're with someone, I'd love to hear about how it's been for you. And thank you so much for watching, you guys. Thank you for the requests, and keep those requests coming. We'll talk soon. Bye.